You've seriously never heard of the term, what's the deal banana peel?
Right.
You've never heard that.
Nope.
Do, do you guys not have bananas in California?
We have our share of bananas.
But you've never heard what's the deal banana
What's
peel?
the deal? Yeah, no, I have not.
Wow.
Well, you said I'm not east of the Mississippi. That's the demising line, it sounds like. I do need to get out more. I do need to get out more. I'm out right now.
Exactly. So you're out right now. You know what you should do? You should walk into whatever social event that you're probably going to go to once you hang up the phone with me. And you should say, what's the deal, banana peel?
See who reacts.
You are where again?
I'm in Topeka, Kansas.
And what are you doing in Topeka, Kansas? Other than admiring the change in altitude from 0 to 1.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder what the altitude is here. I'm looking at my watch to see if it tells me. It says I'm at 1466. I have no idea how accurate that is, which is higher than where I live by 200 feet.
Yeah, but even if it's 1466 above sea level, just say if that's accurate, it means that the entire state of Kansas, and there's one person who's going to probably rip me for saying this, but it's still flat, like flat.
Well, flat doesn't mean sea level. Come on. I mean,
No,
what
it doesn't.
are you saying?
It just means flat.
It just means flat.
Means that you could take the largest ball of twine and lay it out, and it won't like rise or fall. It'll just be a straight line.
Well, it won't keep rolling if you start unrolling it, right? Yeah. It is interesting to think about because in California, living near the ocean, I mean, I'm probably 45 minutes away on a good day because traffic is real. But California has some tremendous elevation and geography. One of the things that California's claim to fame is with regards to, the highest point in the Western Hemisphere being Mount Whitney at like 14,000 feet. And then Death Valley, which is less than 100 miles away at minus 282 feet at the bottom of Badwater Basin. So they do this race. It's like a 24-hour road race by foot or by bike. I'm sure they probably do both. But it's they go from Badwater to Whitney, and it's just a continuous. It's like 100 miles or something, and you go from the lowest point to the highest point, and it's got to be brutal because I've been to both, and the top of Whitney is no joke. There's no oxygen up there, none. And it's only half the elevation of Mount Everest. So pretty interesting.
So what did you say the lowest point was, elevation was?
I think it's minus 282.
Minus 282?
Right. Yep.
Jeez.
Weird, right?
And I thought it was bad as that, like the flood level where I lived in Florida was 13 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
And my living room floor was 7 feet above sea level.
Yeah. Rising oceans, not a good place to be. Yeah. So yeah, Badwater. If you drive into Death Valley from, I don't know, it's kind of in the middle of Death Valley, but it's like the salt basin, and it's this really gnarly salt. It's not like a salt flat where they race, rocket cars. It's a very gnarly. They call it the Devil's Golf Course. Is actually one of the places there. So it's you would never find a golf ball if you hit it out into there. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Does it just like go straight down into the pit?
It's just really gnarly. Like the salt, you can actually hear the salt growing. It crackles as you are out there because it's just constantly growing and changing. So it's amazing. It's a place to be for sure. Super cool. Got some great photographs of that area.
Okay, so the salt's growing. Probably not on the rim of your glass that you've probably finished and came in here to thankfully record with me. But so what are you doing in Kansas?
Yeah, so there's I guess it's AIA Kansas's 101st year of being an organization. So they invited me to come do the closing keynote presentation, speaker, whatever, tomorrow, and so it's a 2-day event. I was around today for the opening keynote and some CE credits, and basically, I've learned a lot about AIA Kansas. It's actually really interesting because of their kind of weird relationship with Kansas City, Missouri, and Missouri in general. In Kansas, I don't know what it's like where you live now, but there is only one AIA chapter. I mean, it is the regional chapter. It's this big, it's the state chapter. Where in California, because of where I live and where I did work, I had my choice of like 3 chapters that I could have been a part of. So because, you can either pick the one you live in, regional, or you can pick the one you work in regionally to be a member of for your local dues, then go to support that one. But in Kansas, it's just one.
So funny you say that, and funny that you mention that, because I just applied for and had my AIA membership transferred from my AIA Potomac Valley, which, so put in perspective, Maryland, really small state, and it actually had quite a few. And then I could have either been affiliated with AIA or DC AIA or AIA Baltimore, or something that was closer to my home, which I chose that one because it was a small chapter. But I am now looking at the AIA Michigan chapters, and so I'm officially part of the AIA Michigan and AIA Detroit. And there is several chapters, 11 chapters,
Wow.
11 regions in the state of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you could assume that the entire Upper Peninsula is all one chapter because it's remote from, the mitten. So, but yeah, so I'm now officially that. But yeah, it's interesting is because there are those regions that pretty much like the state is the local chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when, they're much larger states out west of the Mississippi. And so if you only have like one chapter one chapter for, say, Kansas, then you're like, if you live in western Kansas versus eastern Kansas, which is where, Kansas City is and all that other stuff. I mean, I'm assuming everything is, well, is it based out of Topeka or is it based out of Kansas City?
It's based out of Topeka. Topeka is the capital. And what's interesting is a lot of people, I guess there's this, I don't even know how much of this I can talk about, but AIA Missouri, all of Kansas City, no matter which side of the state line it's on, is part of AIA Missouri because of some weird politics. So there could be Kansas architects, AIA members who are actually part of the AIA Missouri, like whatever, that region, just because that's where they live and because it's part of that larger metro area. So yeah, it's interesting because Kansas is a large state and Topeka is pretty much on the east side. It's an hour away from Kansas City by car. So if you live in western Kansas, like you're not going to AIA meetings, right? It's just you're not going to do it. So it is very kind of weird how it's all kind of been drawn out and divided up, or not divided up, but yeah, there's a lot of weird politics, So anyway, they invited me here from where I live. They didn't care where I live, but I guess it has to do with the things that I'm interested in, the things we talk about, the things I talk about on the other podcast, to kind of talk about what's the next 100 years of architecture look like. So they just celebrated their 100-year anniversary. What's the next 100 years? And when they invited me, no disrespect, but I laughed out loud. Like we can't even think about what the next 5 years is in this profession. Like, you tell me, look back 5 years. Can you have predicted any of the major shifts that we've seen? Like, think back 15 when the iPhone came out. Did anybody see that we'd all have a computer in our pocket that we use for, I don't know, 15, 20, 50 times a day to check for some kind of information or whatever. So yeah, what's the next 100 years look like? I have no clue. My crystal ball is very foggy. But I do have a lot of things that are going on right now, and I think, one of my big points that I'm going to be making tomorrow is that, well, yeah, there's a lot of tech and there's a lot of innovation, and the level of innovation outpaces the level of adoption by leaps and bounds, right? The bigger issue is actually the adoption part than the innovation part, because you can look at the eye candy, you can look at the innovation and get excited about it, but what are you actually going to do about it when it comes to your firm? And so my big question is, like, what do we owe the future of this profession? Because if you look at the demographics of a typical firm or of AIA Kansas, the majority of the people sit in the younger generations, but the ones in the older generations are the ones who make the decisions. And so the question is really for them: what do you owe the future of this profession?
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to like just have a roundtable of asking that very question to firm owners that are either planning or not planning for like secession.
Secession, like leaving the
No, that's
secession
success.
or succession.
Succession.
Yeah.
Succession. Success. Leave me alone. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But the point being is, it's like, how exactly to your, your question is like, how are you leaving the profession? How are you preparing the profession with your experience, your knowledge? How are you leaving it?
Right. Yeah. Prepare the way, right? I think that that's totally it. It is interesting for people to get exposed to what's going on out there or what's coming, what's next. I mean, especially when you think about the technology that we use to deliver projects being over 2 decades old, but it's still just kind of a evolution of the drafting board, right? It's just the digital version of the drafting board, whereas other industries are automating. And I mean, I've got the charts and the graphs to prove it, right? It's we are the construction industry, which we are a part of, is far below the digitization of almost every other industry, if not the lowest. I mean, we're like second or third from the bottom. And when you think about that, I mean, it's like we're a victim of our own kind of short-sightedness and ability to get away from the project to work on the profession and do that succession planning, and not just from a leadership standpoint, but from a technological, from a business model standpoint, all of those things, to actually take our attention away from the deadline that we have right now on this project to be thinking about those things. And that's where leadership comes in, and that's where I'm really hoping to just kind of make an impact or connect some dots for people to say, this is actually really important, and I have to think differently about this. It has to become a priority, because if it doesn't, there's a really high chance. I mean, rural communities like this are losing people, right? So when I say the question, like, does the profession deserve to exist? It's a much more urgent question for communities like this than it is for somebody in an urban area, because those are attracting people. People are, the emerging professionals are moving automatically to those locations because that's where the projects are. That's where the business is. That's where the experience potential is. And you look at a rural community and it's a totally different story. And it just seems like the days are so much more numbered here than they are on the coasts, for example.
Which is interesting because, there's Rand out of Oklahoma or Marlin out of Arkansas, and those are those communities, and they are, leading in the design profession, but they are, they basically decided to stay regional, right? And open up practices that serve the regional community. And maybe that's, the pattern for the future, is just for those particular areas where the sense of urgency of like keeping and fostering the next generation, really should kind of look more towards than the flock, like jumping the fence and run into LA or, New York or Chicago or places like that where they can practice with like the big names and get the exposure and get the, so I worked for, this architect or that
The
architect.
cred, yeah, they want the
Yeah,
credibility.
exactly.
Well, I do
Yeah.
see that happening for sure, but then does seem to be kind of a repeating story of people who are drawn back to these communities, maybe because they have older generations of family still there who didn't leave. There's also this weird sentiment of, did you get out, right? And why did you come back? Which is kind of a weird stigma, right? That people attach to people who did go out and try something different, but then ended up coming back. Or maybe they come back to visit and they, because they have dreams of getting out and they just want to talk about that with, live vicariously or get a little inspired to do it themselves. But I hear that a lot when I go to these smaller communities, like, how'd you get out?
I haven't talked to, any architects in the area, but I moved here. And then, people are like, oh, well, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm an architect. Why are you in Detroit? It's just like, why are you here? Why aren't you at one of these, did you fail in your career? Did you,
It's some like
you know,
lower rung on the ladder of architectural significance. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. It's just like, shouldn't you be making your way in LA or California, LA or New York? Why aren't you there? Why aren't you making your mark? Then I started talking to them a little bit and telling them, about like where I'm actually based out of. And they're just like, oh, but you're doing an international project and you're working out of your house in Detroit, but for a firm in Baltimore. That seems so weird. And you're like, yeah, you don't have to be in those places to do either good work or make an impact and stuff. So
It's an interesting way to kind of phrase it all like that, but it happened like that was the solution to the problem. It wasn't the at the inception of the idea, right? So like you guys have figured out a way to make this work, but it's not how you went into it. And I wonder if it's even possible. I'm sure it is possible, but I'm wondering if it's okay. Let's just say, would ASG ever attempt solving a problem that way that hasn't started yet? Like intentionally, or is this only a reaction to a situation? And I know that it kind of falls more on the reaction to a situation side of things, but are firms set up to, we've talked about remote work and getting talent from anywhere and I mean expanding your borders of where you do projects because location isn't as important as it used to be. But I still think we kind of go back to what we're used to, and that doesn't become potential.
it's kind of funny that ASG is actually set up more as, I don't necessarily agree that it's like, say in my situation, it's a reaction to, it really is that we do projects all over the place and they're okay with their people being all over the place. Because even before COVID, we had people all over the place. I mean, yes, we had our main offices in Baltimore or DC or Phoenix, but then we had remote workers all over the place. And it was, I don't know if it's the joke or if it was just, part of like our expansion kind of philosophy is that, we'll do projects anywhere that Southwest flies. So we'll go, wherever, I guess we had a corporate deal with them, to fly and stuff. But it was just the thing.
Well, if you're near a hub, it makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we would just go wherever the winds take us. And so maybe that's the solution. Yeah, I can work for this person or this person, or this person, but why not stay local to family and friends and things like that, but still be able to practice for a firm in New York or DC or LA or whatever. Anyway, I know we kind of diverged from the conversation, which, that's
Kind of
what
how it
we
works. Yeah.
typically do. But what have you seen? Let me interview you a little bit. Like, what have you seen in Topeka since you've been there? Has it just been mostly convention stuff?
So mostly convention stuff, except I did get kind of the royal tour by the main VP here at the AIA, and she, because my grandparents on my father's side are both from Kansas, that became kind of a big driver for them to pursue me to come here. So that the neat thing about that was like, okay, there's kind of a coming home aspect to the story.
How did they know you
Well,
were?
that just came up. That just came up during the first conversation, So they didn't like stalk me ahead of time to figure that out, but it just came up, and then I think that just made it even more of an obvious. Oh, we have to do this now. Like, oh, now that we know that, we have to do this. So it was cool.
Which is cool.
And so one of the big things, one of the big draws here is just obviously the openness, but there's this big preserve called I forget the actual name of it, but it's a partnership, private-public partnership with the National Park Service and the Nature Conservancy for this grasslands prairie natural reserve, something like that. And it's in the Flint Hills, and it's a absolutely gorgeous area. So I got to go check that out yesterday and spend some time seeing kind of the protected areas of Kansas, and absolutely gorgeous rolling grass hills and wildflowers and old limestone buildings and limestone barns. And there's a beautiful area kind of southwest between Topeka and, I guess the highway goes all the way to Santa Fe, New Mexico, but it's one of those just amazing areas with rivers running through it and these rolling grasslands where the buffalo used to roam, and very Wild West, right? But protected, beautiful area worth saving. So that was kind of above and beyond the conference part of it that I got to experience.
Yes. Did you get your national parks
They
passport
didn't
stamp?
even ask. It's like a totally free, you don't even have to pay to go there. And I don't have a passport. My son does. I don't have my own. Do you have your own?
Uh, we all got them when we had moved to the DC area because there were so many different like national parks or like national battlefields and places like that. And so we all had them and we were all getting them stamped. But then it kind of just fell by the wayside because everybody was just like, "That's for kids stuff."
No, it's so cool. I would do it if I had one, but I
It
feel like I've
is.
been to so many parks that it's just too late now that I would feel bad that I've been to so many that I never got a stamp from that I probably won't see again.
Yeah. Well, I was, my thing is not necessarily the stamps, but to get the little plate for my
Oh,
walking stick.
cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was, and if they had them, I would,
I would
buy
not
the.
have even thought of bringing it on this trip, honestly. I did not expect that to have happened, which has happened a few times where it's like you find yourself in a situation where you're like when I went to St. Louis, I never thought that the Gateway Arch was a national park. I would not have thought to have brought my passport there. So, or my yearly card that I happily pay the park service every year just to contribute, right? But I didn't even bring it. So I end up paying for the entry fee anyway. So, yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it.
I got a free one last time because they had changed the entrance into the national parks where, veterans, as long as you can show proof of your service, they let you in for free. And so I was doing that as I was going into Skyline Drive, in Shenandoah National Park. And the lady's like, "Hold on a minute." And then she handed me a brand new card that said military on it. And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Sweet."
that's cool.
I was like, I still kind of want to give you the $80, for it because
Right. They're so underfunded.
exactly. It's just like, I don't want to deny you the money that I've been giving you, all these years for this thing. Like I have no problem giving you money because I support your cause.
Yeah, so that was a cool little extra thing that I got to do. Other than that, I've been just kind of here and there working on, just putting all the crossing the T's, dotting the I's on my presentation for tomorrow, and listening to architects tell cool stories. It's what's really cool is they just did a Pecha Kucha kind of event. They call it Chit Chat, and the first
Hmm.
architect who,
Okay.
yeah, easier. It's totally Kansas, right? It's yeah. Let's do the Chit Chat event. It's so funny that you say that because so many people say Pecha Kucha in so many weird ways. I don't know that I'm saying it right, but I hear so many translations of that I'm just like, what are you saying? So yeah, Chit Chat. Let's make a movement to change it. So this first architect did a presentation on this zine that he does with some friends from college. This was from the '90s, and they still do this zine, and it was, I think it's called Johnny America or Johnny American, something like that. I'll have to look it up and see if I can put it in the show notes. But it was just such a great, funny presentation, and he did this thing where he set up his PowerPoint ahead of time and he set it to autoplay so that he could not go over time, right? And it was just automatically advancing to the next slide every, I don't know, 20 seconds or whatever. It was pretty funny. And so what I was going to say about that was I felt like these architects, at least at this event, aren't taking themselves very seriously, which I totally appreciate. And I think that is something that needs to happen way more often in this presentation, or sorry, in this profession, is that we just need to be way less serious about ourselves and what we're doing and have more fun doing it, because that is way more contagious. It should be more contagious than the negativity that I see all over the place, which is also very contagious.
Yeah. That's funny is you say that. I obviously sit through tons of meetings per day, per week, per month, per year. And everybody seems, wants to be so serious about it. And sure enough, when they log on to a meeting invite that Cormac sent, they are not going to get professionalism. They're going to get,
Guaranteed.
I mean, they're going to get work done. But I mean, I hate sitting through meetings that are so stuffy and stale where even if I'm talking, I'm falling asleep, which is possible to do. Let me just tell you, it is possible to fall asleep while you're talking if the meeting is that boring. So for the love of all that's holy, stop
Right,
conducting
right.
boring
I
meetings.
thought it was so refreshing to see this
And
presentation, and now I'm going to pause because I can't think of the word and the slides are still going and I'm going to fall behind, and it was just really fun. And that to me was something that is just so necessary today, where we're so serious, we're so strapped for everything, budgets, time, we're tortured artists. And I felt like, oh wow, I would love to work with that guy. I would love to collaborate with that guy, because just his approach to this presentation, if he messed it up, it wasn't going to be the end of the world, and everyone was totally okay with that. And I don't know if that's a Kansas thing or if that's just a him kind of a thing, but I felt like we need more levity like that. It was really cool.
I will say that something that I do find refreshing about, the small interaction with Midwest folks are, since moving back to the Midwest, is that they don't necessarily take themselves too seriously because, in a way, what's the point? So I did find Johnny America, a little zine of fiction, humor, and other miscellany, published by Moon Rapid Drinking Club and Benevolent Society. See, it's just like, yeah, exactly. That's great. Um, and their latest publication is Obscure and Irregular.
He kind of went through the
Love it.
history and showed the timeline of the evolution of the zines and talked about his really bad graphic skills. And then at one point he had finally built up some skills in InDesign in the late '90s, right? And then here in this one, you can really see the grid coming through, and we're really settling into the graphic layout, and really building some serious skills at this point. And this cover, you had to bake it in the oven because it was glow in the dark ink, and like we're just another level. It was really cool. So I think they're on like issue 10 or something, and it just sounds like a kind of a labor of love. And he made a very strong point that the point was never to make any money. He's like, we're architects, right? So our goal was just to break even. So there's a lot of fun little jabs thrown in there to make fun of our own profession, and it was great because it was in a room full of architects. So
Did you yell out, "Amen, brother"? I hear that.
that would have been good.
There is one. I'm just scrolling through the latest issue, and there's one article in here called "The Encyclopedia of Serial Killers."
All right.
I'm sold.
I don't know how many contributors there are, but it sounded like there were 2 or 3 or 4. But yeah, all college roommates or studio mates from architecture school way back when, and still finding the time to put something like this together. It's pretty cool.
So, okay. So otherwise, tomorrow you have your big keynote. I don't know if you actually get nervous, but do you get nervous?
It depends on the event and the content. Not for this one.
You always seem so well prepared.
I kind of spend a lot of time figuring that stuff out ahead of time. Yeah. So I would say, there's a healthy mix of letting whatever happens happen and trying to be as prepared as possible, but not over preparing. Right. So that's kind of how I roll with presentations. I'm very, because of the podcast, Cormac, I am very okay with allowing whatever comes out to just come out and be a part of it, because this is not something that needs to really stand the test of time, right? So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, because I mean, you say that I find that, like, say for you're talking about this guy had this presentation set up, but I mean it just kind of like he got a little ahead of himself or a little behind on it and everything else, and it just happened, right? And as you said, whatever happens because it's just a moment in time. And it's so funny because when we think about the way that architects prepare for like presentations for new projects and stuff like that, it's so scripted. So
I thought we should definitely talk about that. Yeah. I mean, I've worked at a firm, they would hire a presentation coach because winning the project was such a big deal. And to be honest, there are people who need that. Right? For sure. There are definitely people who can I need that. I can always get better. And then there's the architects in the room who are like, I don't need this. I don't need to be here. I'm perfect. I'm cool. I'm the best. Like, people love me. And there's other people in the room who are like, no, you actually do need this because you're full of yourself, right? And clients don't like listening to you because you're full of yourself. And it's interesting. Like, there's a lot of dynamics at play there. And then there are really people who don't need the prep, who do their best when it is just off the cuff. And there's no way to kind of properly categorize people because there is ego and preparedness, and there's so many things involved. But those are, they could be interesting, and they can also be torture when they bring in the presentation consultant or the communication consultant, whatever they're called, to come in and prepare for those big pitches. And yeah, there's so much preparation that goes into those. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting is because the last time I was on a presentation for we were going after a project, and my portion of it was things that were in my wheelhouse about like adaptive reuse, and so they wanted me to talk more about like that and how we work with buildings like that and how what's the process like. I happened to also be traveling to Saudi Arabia at the time, and so I couldn't practice with them. And so they were like, well, let me write you a script, and this is what we want you to say, and here are your slides, all
You're
that
like,
other
I
stuff.
am not an actor. I cannot memorize that stuff.
And so I looked at this, looked at the slides, looked at the script, and tried to commit to memory. And I'll tell you, I'm actually worse if I have to go off of a script. If I
You just sound like you're reading, right?
It's either that or I get so nervous that I'm going to forget one of my lines, that I don't really do very well. It's just kind of like, it's not comfortable or natural for me. And so I tend to get overly nervous or overly complicate or overly think about things. And then, and so we were giving the speech, and I kind of just hobbled through my slides. And then when they came back to me to ask some direct questions specifically about it, here I am thinking, getting a little overly nervous about, oh, I'm back to the slide. I'm back to the information that, we presented on the slides, and which of course I didn't really know very well because I was traveling. I didn't write it, and I was traveling and everything else. So then I just said, all right, I got to shoot from the hip and just completely go off script of this. And it felt more natural and more of a flow. And they're like, oh, I like how you just kind of ad lib some of the slides and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't really do that because I didn't know what the hell you put on the slides.
Well, then there's always the person who is like, okay, I am absolutely not going to say this because no one in the room wants me to. And then they do it because that's their natural tendency, is to go into this minutia, and there's not time for that. And they do it anyway because it's who they are. And everyone else in the room is trying to elbow them or kick them under the table or whatever to say, stop it. You said you weren't going to do this. You're ruining the presentation, but you're doing it anyway. Yeah.
Or, you go or you go through all of this practice. And this was another one that I noticed. So you're going through all of this practice, and, everybody's got their speech down. And then when you're in the actual room, it all goes out the window and they start reading off the slides. I'm like,
yeah, this is not what we practiced. It's not what we agreed to.
Yeah. So,
yep.
I was just like, wow.
It is interesting to think about this from a kind of a student perspective. This is, there were definitely presentations, right? There were juries and crits and presentations. But to think about this whole idea of the project pursuit, and you've got several different experts at the table who are all going to have these speaking points, and they're going to talk about their various expertise, and then there's going to be somebody over there pushing the button to advance the PowerPoint and whatever. And this is a totally foreign concept, right? And not very many people get to participate in the pursuit process out of the ones who are in the office, right? But it is kind of a weird, but I don't know. I think for some people it's kind of exhilarating. For other people, it's just absolute trauma, right, to go through. But they're forced to because of the role that they have and the expertise that they have, and they're going to be the ones who would work with the clients. The clients want to see the people that they're going to be working with, because that's the point, right? It's to see if there's a match between the clients and the people that they're hiring, because they want to work with the people they want to work with. It's a very interesting piece of what architects do to try to win work and compete for work with other firms. And I guess where I'm going with this is, it just is a totally screwed up business model. This totally goes back to, how much time do we spend trying to win work? Not even competition work, right? I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about legit jobs that pay people salaries at firms for years, and we have to compete for it. How many do you win? What's the percentage? 20% if you're good, 30% if you're the best, right, of all the jobs you go after. It's crazy to me that this is the life of an architect. And here we are. That's what we do.
And here we are.
And it's just this is the accepted way to do it. This is how you do it. You put all the stuff out. Your marketing department is not marketing, it's business development. It's teaching people how to win work. This is never a part of the education of becoming an architect. So it's just how firms operate, and this is what you do, and this is how you do it. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, that's my presentation tomorrow has nothing to do with any of that. It's I'm excited to do it. It's going to be, I hope it's going to be, kind of eye-opening, but then, my twist is really it's about people and being prepared to, like, it's what we do here. It's what I do on the other podcasts. It's really kind of I'm a portal to the people in the profession or outside of the profession who will give you the information you need way faster than you can get searching on Google or trying to find. So if it's tech and you want to find out everything you can about architecture and technology, listen to my podcast, right? Just stay up to date there, and you're going to get so much more information there. But it's also what I'm doing at Tech. It's about connecting architects with the right people at the right time and getting what you need way faster than if you were to try to find it on Google. So there's kind of a twist to the technology story, right? Which is, yeah, there's a lot of eye candy, but the cool thing is there's real people behind all this technology. And the reason we do what we do is not because of the technology, it's because of the people. I mean, we serve our clients as architects. We are contributing to our communities. Like, we're not doing this so that we get to use Revit. I mean, that would be crazy, right? We're not doing this so that we get to use whatever the latest tools are. No, those are a means to an end. The cool thing is, if you're a firm out there who is not up on the latest, greatest, there's people out there willing to help you, and they know everything, and they will help you if you just connect with the right people. So my story actually is, I hope, a little unexpected in that regard, because I think most of the time when people are hearing about technology, they're thinking about just the tool and what it can do, and then they're kind of wondering if they could ever figure it out, or if what it would take to do training. And there's so many reasons to not do it all of a sudden. After they see it and they love it, it's like, then they avoid it, right? So as the gap of innovation and adoption gets bigger and bigger, what's the smallest step you can take to actually start to move in that direction? And the answer is people. You just have to reach out to the right people. So we'll see how it goes, see how it gets received. I guess I'll give an update maybe in the next episode. But I hope that that's a little bit refreshing, because I think that is something that people absolutely can take action on, and it's not too intimidating, right? Because we all work with people. So that's the goal.
And you, sir, are the portal to the people.
I'm the portal.
I wasn't going to let that go.
Putting that in the presentation now. I'm a portal.
Thanks for listening. This show is part of the Gable Media Podcast Network. See all the shows at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what we're doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and don't forget to share it with your friends. We'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at archispeakpodcast.com, where you can find our entire catalog of shows. Talk to you soon.